everyone that is on the streets came from somewhere. They either had a house, they had a home, they have kids, but they just dropped off of the ladders, and it doesn't take a lot to get them back up.
You know how much money they invest in the war on drugs? Billions of dollars on the war on drugs. The money that they spend on drugs could be put into so many other different aspects like food and housing and shelter.
Winter is coming again, and here we go. There are hundreds of people on the street, and they're ripping down buildings that can be gutted and used to house the marginalized community in this area. But instead of doing that, they're ripping it down and putting them in condos that none of us will ever be able to afford to live in.
And what I'm seeing out here as an outreach worker, and because I live in this area at the same token, is a rise in desperation.
Nothing has come easily. Nothing has sort of sprung out of nothing and come for free. There's always been some type of community response or community mobilization, or people pushing and having to kind of fight for their needs. But we are in a position where I think we have to fight and defend them. And I think it's really important that when we have received that help, that we don't just kind of take it, get back on our feet, so to speak, and then kind of move on and kind of forget that.
There's a city election coming up on October 27th, 2014. Do you plan on voting?
You got one say, and it's a vote. Voting is your one chance to make a difference. And by not voting, you're throwing that away. I spent 9 years living in the streets and in hostels. I've lost my life to poverty. I know what it's like. Once I put a gun in my mouth and pulled the trigger. That's how bad life has been. We are, homeless people are prisoners of society.
I've watched people walk by Queen and Victoria, and there's a woman that sits on a grate there. And you see these people with these shopping bags, and they've got shopping bags out to here. And not one of those people passing by, and I counted, there were 37 people that walked by this woman, and not one of them dipped into their pocket and handed her so much as a dime, right? And it's like they didn't even see her. The poor community, we are the invisible people of Toronto. And that is how I think the politicians see. Their blinders on. It's like they get tunnel vision when you talk about a poor community. You vote, and then you're made all kinds of promises, and they just turned out to be empty promises. They don't fulfill with what they say they're going to do. I do outreach on a bus from 10 till 2 in the morning. I deal with a lot of homeless men, women in the sex trade, people with mental issues who are out on the street. The summertime, it's fine. In the winter now, I go out tonight at 10 o'clock. I see all kinds of people on the street. We try to make calls to get them into a shelter. There's no beds. What can I tell them? Well, tomorrow morning, come to the drop-in. Tomorrow morning, go to Wink. What do they do from 2 till 9 in the morning? Where's the services for people who line up and go on buses? You take them somewhere to vote. Everybody votes. At the end of the day, they try to get in a shelter. Every agency in the area closes at 5 o'clock. What happened to the people that are out on the street and it's 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning and they're freezing cold? They try to get in a building around here to sleep in the staircase. They get arrested by a security guard and get thrown back out on the street. So the poor just feel like they're being used.
When you're worried about getting your basic needs met and you're so caught up in, trudging from place to place to survive, and you're caught up in that, taking that time out to go and vote for somebody feels really futile and really arbitrary. But I think, being able to come face to face with a particular politician and actually say the words to them, I'm not just that homeless guy down on the street. I'm not just that person in the shelter. I'm not that low-income person over there that doesn't like politicians or doesn't like this. I'm actually the person that voted for you.
I think our politicians got to learn to respect their people. None of this side mouth babble, okay? I'm tired of it. They're not happy with the schoolhouse. Well, what's squalor supposed to look like when you're living in it, okay? People are happy with what little they got, and they want to take that away from you.
If you got everyone downtown who was homeless and had drug addictions and to get interested in voting, you'd fill a wide gap.
We got to get together. It's time for people to, like, you got one say, and it's a vote, and you should use that.
Here are a couple of ways that will make it easier for you to vote when you get to the polling station.
We started about 14 years ago as a group of agencies coming together to help people who are homeless or underhoused access their identification. We have 6 members of our team, and we go to 29 different locations, mostly weekly, but some bi-weekly. We go into drop-ins, we go into shelters, transition houses, social services offices, housing agencies, and we help people to recover their ID so they can get housing and employment, etc. When they walk in, we ask them what they need, and we basically pull out the applications and we get to work. We're not there to quiz them or anything. We try to make it simple, right? We know what's important in this form and what isn't, so we can tell them, you absolutely need this but not this. Ontario, for example, all they need is their information about their parentage and possibly their brothers and sisters, and a name of a guarantor. That's a professional who knows them for 2 years. We take their applications, and what we do is we do up a receipt so they can immediately use that to get housing, and especially to get social services, because people often have the requirement for social services is that they need some proof that they've applied for their ID. So we provide them with that so they can get a check or ongoing immediately. And then we try to keep in touch with them as best we can to get them the ID as it comes in. So one way or the other, let's say a person who is without funds can come to us and get their ID free.
If you're homeless and you're staying in a shelter, a soup kitchen, or on the streets, if any drop-in sees you and knows you, they can sign this letter right here. And it's a letter of attestation. At the top, they print your name. Below here, they have a residence of the drop-in or the hostel that you're staying in. And then the signature of a supervisor or frontline worker of that drop-in or hostel. And then that's good enough. It's dated and you're ready to go.
Let's see now, it's got to be 11, 12 years ago that I came through these doors. I was a lost soul, totally lost. I adopted it as my home. Everybody embraced me and I embraced everybody. I started volunteering here. I now have a place of my own that I can call my own. I don't have to worry about where I'm going to sleep that night, or now I can concentrate on what I'm going to eat. You know what I mean? I don't have to worry about where I'm going to sleep. I don't have to worry about being safe. I'm now safe in my own little place. I don't worry about nobody coming in. It means a whole lot.
You know, housing is so important, because how on earth do you get healthy if you're not housed? It's impossible. You can't. You've got no stability in your life, okay? And the shelter is a very temporary situation, and some people wind up in them for years.
And everybody cries about joblessness and homelessness. I mean, there's an underlying issue there. It's called addiction. So, I mean, it's always the different mental issues that go along hand in hand with the addictions. And, like, you know, then other than that, there's codependency. So, I mean, like, you know, you don't want to be alone. There's methods and things that addiction people have, they're psychiatrists, but you know what, it's kind of gone beyond where the level of where they're at. It's something new has got to be implemented.
Right now we're arguing for harm reduction, 24-hour harm reduction drop-in at night. You've got these old buildings in Regent Park that you tear down. Take one of them, gut them, redo it. Create a harm reduction drop-in center.
If they could implement stuff like that, I think it would be a far better thing for people that use drugs, as well as the community itself. Now you have a place for them to go. People are going to do what they're going to do. So why not give them somewhere safe to do it and give them a safe way to do it?
The shelter or drop-in center you normally go to will tell you the location of the closest voting place.
You can vote before Election Day at various advanced polling stations throughout the city. The advanced vote is spread over 8 days and includes options for every day of the week.
At the polling station, they will review your ID or letter of attestation. You will be given a ballot and shown to a ballot booth. On the ballot will be candidates for mayor, councillor, and school board trustee.
can bring a list of candidates you want to vote for, and you can bring a friend if you need help.
In the voting booth, there will be instructions on how to mark the ballot.
You only vote once, but if you make a mistake or change your mind, give your ballot back to an election official and you will be given a new one.
In front of City Council, we've gone in and demanded they open up at least 50 more beds, like a decent shelter for women to go to. Street-involved women are at such a disadvantage. Number one, they've got no place to go. So they wind up doing what they can to survive, working the streets, okay? Getting high and working the streets go hand in hand, because if you think you can get out there and work the streets and stay normal, you cannot. It's not possible. I'm up here, I know. What we need is a 24-hour-a-day drop-in for women. A facility where they can come in, get some rest, get some food, where they can come down, you know, from being high out there all night, maybe 2 or 3 days run of it, okay, making money, trying to survive. Because you got to realize, if you don't have housing in TCHC, and we all know what the figures are, I'm not sure what the waiting list anymore, it just keeps getting bigger in this city, okay, it just keeps getting bigger. So if you don't have housing, it means you've got to pay rent. If you've got to pay rent, even to rent a room in this city, what are we talking, maybe $500, and that's for nothing, okay? You still got to come up with, if you're on OW, you can't live at all. If you're on disability and you're still not housed, you still can't pay your rent, so you're still working somehow. God forbid you should get caught. That's how you wind up in prostitution, because it's under the table. All right, so you're working like this on this odd, you know, balance of life. Where's the children in all of this? Where's the kids? They're stashed here, they're stashed there, and then they get lost into the system, okay? And now the woman's out there and she's totally traumatized, because she was already traumatized to begin with, okay? Now she's completely lost. Her kids are gone. She's not going to get off the street. So what we need is a facility, okay, that can accommodate these women. I suggest 50 beds. I'd like to see 100.
I am still currently on ODSP. Those of us that have survived on this amount of money, those of us that have used the shelter system, those of us need to speak up and need to be present and need to be heard, and we need to hold the people accountable, because, you know, there's this idea that you're in this position because you made a bad decision or you've done something wrong, and there's a lot of systemic issues that bring you there and make it really hard to get out. I did some deputations at City Hall, and when you're looking at somebody, you know, that's never really survived a day in their life on the street and has no clue what that's like, or you don't necessarily see them down at the shelters experiencing the reality or talking to people, I think there's a skepticism, but there is something very powerful and satisfying about being able to use your voice. If a particular politician is going to make cuts to services and programs, then, you know, I can say that at least they're not going to be able to do it easily, and at least they have to do it with some accountability. And at first, like I said, the very first time I deputed, you know, I was really, you know, just thought I really didn't have a place in that room. But there was a lot of power to be found in being able to speak up and have a voice in that room, and have them ask them questions that they have to answer.
Get a big pot of soup and come down and give out soup. Stand in the hole with them for a half an hour, 45 minutes. That's all it takes. It does not take a lot. Like, they don't want to get housing overnight. They don't want to get rich. They don't want this, but come down and be a part of the community. That's all it takes. You have to really want to do it. And you have to love what you do, and then after you get elected, you have to do what you say you're going to do.
If I elect an elected official, and on these promises, I'm going to try to hold them to them.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see.
I'm not holding anything to anybody, because who am I? I'm no.
Well, that's just it, and that's the problem with homeless people. Who are we? We can just shuffle off and go away and die.
There's one way about this thing I think about right now, it just popped in my head. Instead of going to these people and making them accountable, screw these people and run yourself.
There are people that look up to you. It's exactly what you said. You're not sure, but I see it.
Well, you know what?
Just by my visits here.
Yeah.
So there's always room for running.
1,600 beds is Campbell Connell's ride. Could you imagine if you got 75% of those votes? You could actually win the election right there.
There you go, Tommy.
You could, because
Are you going to make your announcement now?
Hey, for mayor.
I'd love to do that.
Tell him you're only a weed smoker. I only smoke weed, I don't do the hard stuff.
Now that you voted, you got to keep your councillors accountable. Today we're here for homeless shelters because they're overcrowded, very dangerous.
Homelessness, as we have often said in these halls, is the result of a much bigger issue, that of social inequality. And for many of the homeless, the shelter system is the last hope, standing between life and death. And the message that we carry today, and we carry it in our bodies, is no more homeless deaths.
Let's stand together and vote.